Okay, so I am William Mckee. I'm a business psychologist, executive coach, and associate tutor within PD. And they've asked me to do a short video on the idea of leadership behaviours. So I'm just going to get a few slides up. There we go. So what's all this about then? Leadership behaviours. Well, there's any number of ways of looking at leadership. There's hundreds of theories, loads and loads of research, any number of books. Why would you want to pay attention to this one? Or what is it exactly? Well, first of all, we're not interested in roles or titles or that really kind of common phenomenon of a team or a group of people when you say, right, who's the leader? And everybody kind of looks at the named person. Well, they're the director, they're the team lead, they're the sergeant, they're the, whatever it is. Account executive, whatever your title is, that's where the team look. Forget that for a moment. We're not interested in the hierarchy. We're not interested in the official designation or the org chart or anything like that. We need a really simple definition of leadership to get into the behavioral study of it. So from that perspective, leadership just causes people to follow. If you have people following, you have some leadership going on in the room. And that's where it gets interesting, because when you observe a team or a group of people working together, sometimes the person who is the designated leader, the leader on paper, they will be leading. It's in their job description. They get paid for it. They should be doing some of it. But sometimes other people will be doing things that cause the group to follow them. And that can be tremendously useful, or it can be tremendously detrimental. And that's why this behavioral view is so interesting. Because we're really saying at any given point, if behavior is just stuff that humans do, any behavior, it could be asking a question, it could be a sideways look, it could be just whatever people are doing. Some of those will be leadership behaviors because they cause other people to act. I mean, and that's not always a good thing. If I'm being intensely rude to someone and provoking a reaction from them as a result of that, technically I'm leading because I'm driving their behavior, but that's not particularly useful. What we're saying is, okay, in any given situation, some behaviors from anyone who's present, not just the named leader, but some behaviors promote useful action and some behaviors really don't. And we can start to study that. And we can start to say, right, how do we encourage more of the useful behaviors? And how do we discourage some of the less useful behaviors? That's what it is. But why? Why would we bother with this approach or this view? Well, there's no single model or theory of leadership. Like I said, it's an incredibly well-studied topic, but I mean, there's transactional leadership, transformational leadership, situational leadership, servant leadership. That's a really popular one at the moment, quite in vogue. I honestly think there's someone somewhere will have put some word in front of leadership and will have their definition of it. And a lot of people probably have studied it and written papers on it and written books about it. So we don't have just one agreed methodology or framework by which people can lead. And the reason for that, why this becomes so difficult, is because of context. Context is everything. Our greatest strength in one context becomes our greatest weakness if that context shifts. You can see this, biology constantly throws this one up in terms of evolution. So you might have some animals that are incredibly well adapted to a particular environment, the woolly mammoth, the saber-toothed cat, if we think about some relatively recent extinctions. The minute the context shifts, the things that made them so good, well insulated, warm, or particularly good at taking out a particular prey, the minute the environment changes, it warms up, that prey goes away, whatever the story is, that adaptation becomes a weakness, and the animal can't change quick enough to keep up. The same is true with leadership. Often the things that work really well in one place, you pick that leader up, you plonk them down somewhere else, they employ the same kind of attitudes, ideas, and ultimately behaviors. and they don't work because the context is different. You see this sometimes with kind of career derailments and things like that. We took our best leader out of that particular team, promoted them to director level, and all of a sudden they've gone from being a great team leader, a great group leader, a great whatever, to a terrible director, or whatever that transition is. And it's because they're not adapting with the context. This is also what can trip up a lot of the popular leadership models. And don't get me wrong, I use them with people. I think they're great. Some of them do have some adaptation in them for context. But you're never going to be able to take in the full amount of context or the full range of behavioural options that are available to us. That's why a behavioural review is so interesting. On the one hand, it's very frustrating because it can be quite loose. It's not very prescriptive. And on the other hand, that's its strength, because it says, well, actually, if there's a whole range of human behaviours, what we need to tune ourselves to is the context. And then we just evaluate, what did I do in that context? Did it deliver on what I wanted it to deliver on? Was it effective? And that's what it gives us. It gives us an incredibly practical framework through which to view effective and ineffective leadership. Here's the framework. Here are the rules of thumb, or the kind of heuristics that you need to say, well, was that an effective behavior in the context of this team, this group, whatever we're trying to get done? Effective leadership behaviors, whatever that might be, a question, a statement, a challenge, introducing something physical, right, let's get this up on a flip chart, let's change a system we're using, something like that. Direction, clarity, and motivation. Positive leadership behaviors, they'll bring the goal in focus. Now, that might be a challenge to the goal to say, actually, we were heading there, but I think this is the better one. Here's the reasons why. So I'm introducing some reasons that convinces people. We change our goal. We know where we're heading, and it's better than where we were heading. That might be effective. I'm sure we've all been there where maybe we're in a meeting, someone says something, and all of a sudden it throws things into doubt and nothing usefully emerges. And you think, well, we had something that we were aiming at, now we're not sure, it's all a bit unclear, what to do. There will be other people where maybe the group or the team has forgotten what the particular goal is. Maybe they've become absorbed in day-to-day activity. Maybe they've become distracted. Maybe there's something short-term, they've taken their eye off the long-term. And someone brings their eye back to, that's the goal, folks. That's the standards. That's what we're trying to achieve. That's really effective leadership behavior. So there's the direction the team are going in and influencing that direction in a positive way. There's then clarity. Once we've established what we need to do, how are we going to get there? So this could be clarifying roles, clarifying responsibility, making sure that people are accountable. Whatever behaviors in that particular situation encourage accountability, those are effective leadership behaviors. Again, I'm sure you've all had experiences. I know I certainly have. There's one particular individual that comes to mind, actually, where they would sort of steam in, and they were a named leader. They would kind of steam into meetings and things, drop a whole load of stuff, and think they were being really helpful, but actually it was just confusing. They took away from clarity on how the hell are we going to achieve this goal. I thought I had my role, I thought you had your role, I thought we knew how we were going to work together, what the steps were, the things that we were going to have to watch out for. And now I'm just confused. So that's kind of very ineffective, whatever they were doing. Bringing clarity to situations. How are we going to achieve this? And lastly, motivation. And this one's quite interesting because people could be very, very aware of the goal. Okay, I know where we're trying to get to. They could have absolute clarity on what's required of them or how we might work together to get there. I know what we're trying to do. I know how we're going to do it. I just really don't want to do it. CBA. You might have had that experience before where you've seen a team. And it's not the first two that are missing, it's the third one. So effective leadership behaviors would build motivation. Now, whether that's showing empathy, bringing people on board that way, whether that's, it could be spending time with someone, it could be trying to understand their point of view, it could be building a sense of team identity. Whatever behaviors are required in that particular moment or that over a period of time to do that. Positive leadership behaviors will have an increasing effect on motivation as opposed to a decreasing effect on it. That's our 3 heuristics: direction, clarity, and motivation. Effective behaviours will act on those. No rules, just reflection and practice. I can't give you a definitive list of leadership behaviours. I wish it was as simple as saying, well, stand with your feet wider than shoulder width apart, look strong, talk with a deep voice, whatever it might be. That's quite old school, but you get the point. It would be easy to kind of caricature a sergeant major, or caricature someone at the other end of the scale that leads in a different way. But that's the whole point. There are so many different ways that people can behave, and there's no one way to kind of skin a cat, as it were. So how do we navigate this then? Well, it's a constant view on what's effective. People are so complex. Leadership is so complex. So we need something that reflects that complexity and takes it into account. That's why there's no rules, just reflection and practice. There are any number of these little reflective cycles. You can Google them. You find one that works for you. It might have 4 steps. It might have slightly different steps. It might, whatever the story is. But the point here is deliberate behavior, that you are trying something deliberately rather than just on autopilot. Here's how I would normally behave. Here's something I'm going to do differently. Then take it apart. After whatever that arena is that you're behaving in, it might be a meeting, a phone call, a one-to-one conversation, whatever it is, in whatever location, in the office, out on site, wherever you might be. But pull it apart afterwards. Go, okay, how would I score myself out of 10 there? What was I trying to do? Did I help with the direction that things were moving? Did I help bring clarity to how we were going to achieve that? Did I have a positive effect on motivation? And if you did, great. What did you learn from that? Where else might that apply? What was the sense of judgment? Because that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build this really fine sense of judgment to say, right, I've seen this situation before, and I reckon the thing I need to do right now is this. And then see how that plays out. Likewise, if it went the other way, well, I was well-intended, but I tried this, and you know what? It confused people. And out of that confusion, actually, nothing good came, because it's not always bad to confuse people, but it's just where it then goes. So we're trying different things. We're using this kind of reflective cycle to evaluate the effectiveness of the different things that we try against these 3: clarity, direction, and motivation. So what might some of these things look like? Well, here's just some questions to reflect on in terms of clarity, direction, and motivation. So the first one, direction. What did I do that helped people focus on the goal, or what did I do that got in the way of making progress? Sometimes it's worth just listing these out. It's worth watching what other people get up to. But that's kind of how you know around that one, around clarity. Did you help people understand, focus, and take action? Because that's ultimately what clarity brings, the ability to take action. If people are unclear, it's hard to see what they do next. Or if they do take action, it's just random or by chance or driven by frustration more than anything, more than a deliberate sense of what they need to do. And lastly, motivation. And this was an interesting thing, because the other side of motivation would be demotivation, but there are other elements that can feed into that, such as cynicism. So you might see some behaviors that build cynicism, that introduce cynicism. Now, cynicism is a really interesting thing. It has its place. If the team's not heading in a useful direction, sometimes cynicism can be the first little flag that something needs to change. People aren't happy. But equally, if a team becomes habituated into cynicism, that will have a very negative effect on motivation. So what behaviors are driving motivation? What behaviors are driving cynicism? And what can you do about that? What can you change? So hopefully that's useful. One of the biggest frustrations I have with leadership behaviors is that it's not prescriptive. It's deliberately vague. And in some ways, that's its greatest strength, and it's also its greatest weakness. But anyway, if you have any comments or any thoughts, please let us know. Love to get your take on it. And yeah, hopefully that was useful. Cheers.